In this episode, I have a conversation with Dane Dormio about Daoism and Materialism. Welcome to the Bottom Turtle Podcast. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Bottom Turtle Podcast. I'm theoretical physicist Dr. Shannon Ray. In today's episode, I'll be presenting a conversation I had with Dane Dormio. Dane is somebody that I met in the comment section of one of the videos I uploaded on YouTube on information and broken symmetry, which that video did very well. I got a lot of attention and I got contacted by several people, including Dario and Hussein, to have conversations with. So I've been having these conversations. And recently I had a conversation with Dane on Daoism, materialism, and just general concepts and things that I discuss in the podcast regularly. So Dane is a very interesting person. One thing about the going on YouTube is I interact with a lot of people who are in the same mind space as me when it comes to things about existentialism and what is reality and spirituality and these things, and deep questions of philosophy and all that. And so Dane is one of those people, and I have to say that I always enjoy conversations with him. He's a very sincere person who has a lot of experience and a lot of interesting ideas and is very interested in philosophy, and he shared a lot of videos with me. And so I always like talking to him, and I hope you enjoy our conversation. Other than that, I don't think there's anything else for me to say. So enjoy the episode. Peace. So I watched the video you sent of, what's his name, Tipler? The 10-minute video, the Oxford Union video. I watched that, and then I watched about 20 minutes of the interview with Kurt. Yeah, it's funny listening to that. It's like some of the stuff that he's saying, like it really does sound like identical to the stuff that I say in the podcast. Like it's like it's like, I don't know. To me, one of the frustrations I have is it feels like the information to solve some of these problems exists and it's there, and everyone's just fiddling around in their own little domain, like wasting time, when in fact, it's like there's a sufficient information to cobble together a pretty complete picture of reality and answer some big questions, but it feels like it'll never actually coalesce.
Well, it's kind of the historical arc of philosophy has been just like ongoing discussion and debate, but nothing is ever really settled.
Yeah.
Something that Tipler said that I kind of, I guess I'm sympathetic to is being what he said, a physics imperialist who thinks physics will eventually take over all of the academic disciplines or something like that. And
yeah,
I'm somewhat sympathetic to that. I mean, I think it may not be true that everything can eventually be reduced to physics, but I think a lot more than we expect will be.
No, man. I'll let you finish, but I've completely diverged from that position at this point in my life.
Oh, you don't think so?
Absolutely not. No. Yeah. But I'll let you.
What I notice is like when the more physics you learn, the more you realize, oh, they're actually really powerful tools for thinking about this kind of problem that most people have no clue about, and like philosophers, most philosophers certainly don't.
Yeah.
And so it seems like the better you understand physics, the more you can understand all kinds of things. But it also reveals kind of where the limits of analytic understanding lie as well.
You're literally repeating my exact words from the podcast. Like these are like verbatim words that arguments that I've made. Yeah.
I mean, what you do kind of when you learn about like where the kind of the edges of technical or scientific knowledge are, then it's amazing. Wow, like look what we've been able to do. Look inside
Yeah.
atoms, and it's amazing things. We know what the sun is made out of. Like who
Yeah.
would have thought that would have been possible? Uh,
Yeah.
but you also realize where the edges are, and they're pretty stark edges.
Well, that's kind of the reason. That's the one's not kind of. That's the reason why I've come to not accept the totality of everything can be understood through physics. It's because the fundamental limit is the true nature of like entropy or uncertainty, and it's not that entropy or uncertainty is the limit of our language. It's a fundamental limit of reality. It's like an eternal truth about reality is that it's fundamentally incomplete and and yeah, and so especially as beings who live in a symbolic like that video that you sent me in the interview, the Kirk interview, he was talking about how we adapted to symbolism. Like we are creatures, like he used the example of beavers are aquatic mammals. Mammals who've adopted to living on water. We are symbolic beings, like we've adapted to living in symbolic spaces. And as such, when we conceptualize the world, we conceptualize it through this symbolic structure, through language. But language itself is is part of something called like a symbolic order. But outside of the symbolic order, there's emptiness. And so when you're trying to ask big questions, it's almost like you're trying to there's this inherent emptiness or lack that's inside the symbolic order, and you're constantly trying to fill it and you're constantly trying to add in more structure to fill the lack, but no matter how much structure you add, you'll never be able to like get rid of it because it's just like a fundamental essence of reality. And this fundamental truth, this ache, this hole, this emptiness is like the foundation or like the I think philosophically you can start there to really ask deep questions about divinity. Like that's where the nature of divinity is. And that's where we're constantly trying to spiral around to find a completeness.
Yeah, that's actually. Oh, wait a second. Hopefully, I sound a lot better now. I realize I had the wrong microphone.
Um, you do sound better, yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna see if it looks like. Let me do something real quick here.
It's funny the way the lighting is on your face. It actually makes it look like you're at the beach. Like the lighting of the beach in the background and the lighting that you have on yourself right now actually makes it it's like the similar lighting.
It's carefully uh, crafted.
Yeah, convenient, more like conveniently crafted.
um,
Mm.
I have another transcription thing going, and I want to make sure it's still working.
Okay, no worries.
Summary.
Yeah,
You know
essentially
what
what you could,
Notion is?
huh?
You know what Notion is?
Notion,
Yeah.
like what a notion is, like the word.
No, no, Notion is a software.
No, I don't know what it is.
Awesome.
No, guess
Um,
I answered that question. I do not.
um, so there's in that that interview that I sent you, I came across that because I was watching all the Toe interviews, and so far that's the only interview that I've watched with Terrence Deacon. I maybe watched one other somewhere, but it's one of my favorite ones of everything I've watched so far. So I got his book, which is called Incomplete Nature,
Oh, interesting.
and it's really deep. I'm definitely going to need to listen to it at least a couple more times to fully wrap my head around it. But and what I've part of what I got from it is it actually seems kind of obvious in retrospect, but um it introduces some really useful terminology in the form of there's contragrade and orthograde processes. Uh, orthograde processes are processes that move down an energetic gradient. Contragrade processes move up an energetic gradient.
Hmm.
And so anytime there is a contragrade process happening, it's because there's an orthograde process happening in a different location or on a different scale, which is really just a restatement of the second law of thermodynamics. But it's like, and whenever you see something like, a ball rolling up a hill, it's because there's some other process where that's where, like, it's gaining potential energy. Then
Mm,
there's some other process that's losing potential energy.
mm,
But the key thing is it can be like the same system, but at different scales of the system. So like it's a given system at one scale, you can have contragrade activity going on, but on another scale, you have orthograde activity. So like
mm,
if if you are organize, if you're doing work, if you're like organizing your office or something, you're doing work to lower the entropy within this volume, but
yeah.
your metabolism on, like on the scale of your cell metabolism, you're expending more energy. So it's like the same system has orthograde and contragrade processes happening simultaneously at different levels or scales or levels of organization.
Yeah, this is an example that one of my professors gave when I was in grad school and I was taking graduate statistical mechanics. And the idea is like you may be reducing entropy by organizing your office, but you also have to eat food to fuel yourself, and then you come out with poop, waste, and that waste is highly unorganized. So you have a net zero change in entropy or something like that.
The other concept, the other new concept in that book is, well, so there's homeodynamic, teleodynamic. Okay, thermodynamic, homeodynamic, teleodynamic. Thermodynamic processes are uh like they're purely orthograde. It's like, burning a piece of wood or a tower falling down or a ball rolling down a hill. They're things that just um, expend themselves. Homeodynamic processes are processes that sustain themselves. So, like a thermostat kind of effect. And teleodynamic systems are systems that seek to complete themselves, that are like inherently incomplete and seek to complete themselves in some form, which is another way of saying that the behavior of teleodynamic systems is driven by not by what is there, but is driven by what is not there.
So what you just said is essentially Lacanian psychoanalysis. You've just described the drive in Lacanian psychoanalysis due to spiraling your lack.
Yeah, yeah, that's I picked up on that too in terms of, and there's also I thought of this particular passage from the Tao Te Ching when I first listened to that interview with Terrence Deacon, but he actually starts his book with this, which is um one of my favorite things, this particular passage, which maybe it's 15. I'm gonna find it.
Yeah, I'm curious just to that interview. Because one thing that I immediately categorize scientists when talk or interact with them in two camps. One that are in who are trapped in the materialistic loop. That is, everything is ran through structure. They it's like they don't allow themselves to think outside of rigorous structure. Um, and then those who allow themselves to be open-minded and start making connections between things, not based off of necessarily because there's an obvious rigorous structure there, but because intuitively these things seem similar, and it allows themselves to actually delve into like this space of the spiritual in a way that's actually productive. I think that most scientists who are really brilliant, they're so trapped in a materialistic worldview that they're never going to solve these problems. So I don't know if this Terrence Deacon guy, like I didn't get to listen to enough of him to be able to make that determination, but I'm curious.
He's
Yeah.
definitely unique in terms of everything that I've heard. I've never heard I've never heard anyone talk about things quite like he does. And actually, one of my first thoughts was when I listened to that interview was some about something Carl Friston says, which is that the free energy principle describes how self-organizing systems behave once they exist, but it doesn't explain how they come into existence.
Yeah.
And then when I was listening to Terrence Deacon, I was like, this is the missing piece. This is the piece that actually explains how they do come into existence.
Hmm. Uh, what was it? Do you remember what his answer was? Because I mean, given the other video you sent me, the 10-minute one of the Oxford Union speech, his really short explanation about the singularity, I thought was apt. Like I thought that was close to the correct answer.
Yeah, well, I did notice a parallel actually. That it's 11. This is the one. Okay, so Tipler wrote a book, The Physics of Immortality, which I read a long, long time ago. I think I was in college when I read it.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, but it's sort of like saying like the end state of the universe is what he calls the I think he did use the word singularity. The term that he's used before is omega point,
Hmm.
which I'm pretty sure is based on the concept of is it Teilhard de Chardin, some French, I think, Jesuit priests who had like kind of a similar idea based in biblical principles, but that
Hmm.
God is like the end state of the universe that's pulling everything towards it. Um,
Hmm.
and and yeah, that is directly lines up with the concept that Terrence Deacon always talks about it's the well like the teleodynamics systems that are sort of motivated to achieve is some sort of end state or something that does not currently exist. And so
Yeah.
rather than like looking at everything that exists and saying how does all of this cause the next thing that happens, looking
Yeah.
at what's the end state and what's the step that's going to bring the system towards that as kind of the cause.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Very similar to what you were talking from the earlier guy you sent me to as well. The what's the guy? The projection guy, the not the astral projection, the remote viewing guy.
Tom Campbell.
Yeah, Tom Campbell. It's similar to that as well. And it's also similar. Like one of the people that I really would love to spend time just like studying his stuff is uh Chris Langan. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Yeah, I watched. I watched his interview on tour. Actually, the one I'm on right now is Theolocution with Chris Langan and Bernardo Castra.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I watched those. I've actually looked at some of his written work as well and everything, and I've listened to some of his stuffs in the podcast. If I had to guess anyone who actually has the closest to the correct answers, at least from a like from a structural point of view, someone who's actually constructed a language to articulate these things, and that in a way that unifies like this metaphysical and the physical in a coherent and consistent way, I'd have to imagine that it's probably him. As far as from my interaction with his work, I think that he's probably got most things figured out. If I had to guess.
Yeah, I know this. It's all up on the web. There's like a CTMU
Yeah, the
wiki.
CTMU. Yeah,
And I don't know. I mean, overall, I'm not as interested in what he has to say as a lot of other people. Um, partly, partly it's just his personality. He
yeah,
seems like he might. I mean, probably is like uh well above average intelligence.
yeah,
But he also has this like really strong victim complex. Like
yes,
very high IQ, very low EQ.
yeah, yeah,
Is like my impression of everything that I've studied of him, and he really just has this like strong victim complex that just I mean, I'm like, dude, if you're smart enough, you should be able to figure out how to, like how to not cast yourself as the victim of your own life story because that's just not psychologically healthy. It's not a
yeah,
psychologically
yeah.
healthy place to be in. Um, uh,
Yeah, no, I agree with I agree with what you're saying. I guess for me, like I can move past it. Like I can see it, recognize it, and understand it. He also seems to have some somewhat
he says some racist stuff sometimes that sounds pretty racist. I don't know like how deep that goes, but I don't know. I feel like just out of pure curiosity, out of some of the stuff that he says that's not related to those things, I find it really interesting. Yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah.
he comes to the conclusion that, God exists and it's the Christian God, and we should all, like, we should follow the Bible, and like, just in general, when I don't think you can, like, make those kind of conclusions. It's like the story about Euler, uh,
Hmm.
um, in the court of Catherine the Great, when there's this uh famous atheist, I think it was Diderot, who was, like, making the rounds and having undue influence on the members of her court. She sicked Euler on him, and he famously held up, like, the equation, like some like algebraic equation, and said, "Therefore, God exists. Respond, sir."
That's what Euler said.
Yeah, yeah, this is, like, famous story, maybe
Huh.
apocryphal, but it was just like some simple algebraic equation that so the story goes, he claimed that this was proof that God exists, but Diderot was mathematically illiterate, so he couldn't respond.
Yeah.
And it, like,
Yeah.
which is it's just as it's just like, I uh I don't think you can, like, make those kind of conclusions uh scientifically. Like, I
Mm.
mean, it's like the science. I mean, one way to look at it is, like, if logic replaces faith, then what's the role of faith? You
Yeah,
know,
I think he has that position, right? He has a position where he thinks that you don't need faith anymore, and that his structure can make faith something pure, reasonable, or rational, right?
yeah,
Like,
and just like
yeah,
that idea, I'm
it's wrong.
on
Yeah,
the
I
face, I'm
disagree.
very skeptical. That like,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not, like, religious in the traditional sense. I don't, like, I don't have, like, I don't, like, hold faith in that sense of, like, a personal value, but
Hmm.
I would think that, like, it seems to be really important to, uh, the traditional religious thing, and,
Yeah.
like, so I that just that I mean, that whole kinda thing makes me skeptical, but,
Yeah. No, I agree with
per
you. I agree with you. Yeah.
personality-wise, it's kinda the same as, like, materialists wanting to eliminate religious faith
Yeah.
based on,
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
and I don't think you can do that. I think that is, creates oppression. If you try to stamp out religious faith, that leads to oppression in whatever form.
Probably
But
oppression of your it's oppression of yourself, probably. I mean, I think that it's pretty clear that you can't get rid of uncertainty. Like, you can't get rid of entropy. There's always incompleteness. It's unavoidable.
yeah, and I mean, even, like, politically, like, when you try to stamp out religion, it leads to persecution. I mean, that's what communist, totalitarian governments have done. That's what the Chinese government does.
Yeah.
Um, it's I just
Well, I mean, I think, like, even psychologically, I think that the nature of I mean, it's the nature of subjectivity, essentially, like, the nature of 'cause like I was saying, the reason why you need faith is because, like, there's never complete information. So there's always uncertainty, which means that oftentimes you have to act without full knowledge. So you have to step into the void, into the uncertainty, and make decisions without full knowledge. So you're gonna have to put your faith in something. And the degree to which you don't have something like an irrational basically, it's something like you have to adopt some part of yourself that is irrational and incoherent. That is the nature of reality that's unavoidable. Is that we as a scientist and as rational minds, we think that everything needs to be in this coherent structure and everything needs to be consistently mapped out and structured into a language that is logically perfect. But the fact is that for one, that's not how most people function at all. And what's it? It's not how most people function. And God, I lost my thread. Yeah, because I was talking about the fact that, like, you try to put everything into this structured. Yeah, the inherent incoherence in reality. I don't know. I lost the thread. Sorry about that.
yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of parallels to that, and this actually is making me think of Forrest Landry as well. But so my what I've been developing, the system I've been developing, the name I've given it is the IBEX metaphysics
Okay.
for internal, boundary, external, exterior. And
I remembered what I was saying, but go ahead. Never mind. Don't worry about it. Just go ahead.
um I I was just like developing this, and I wasn't sure what to call it. Uh, but I made this diagram, and it's basically just like concentric circles or rectangles, kind of. Where, and if you have a thing, if there is such a thing as a thing,
Yeah.
then this thing has an interior.
Mhm.
It's something. There is something that is this thing. Um, and if it's a thing as opposed to everything, then you have to have a distinction
Mhm.
between interior and exterior, which is very much along the lines of the free energy principle. You have any set, you separate it into two subsets, one of which you label inside and the other you label outside.
Yeah.
Um, and it actually doesn't matter which one you label which, and it doesn't. It could just be like a set where like a rectangle that you split in half, and you say this is the inside, this is the outside.
Mhm.
It doesn't have to actually be any kind of containment. Um, but so if you have a thing, you have an inside, have an outside. That means you have a boundary. So you have an internal, you have a boundary, you have an external, as in whatever is not on the inside.
Yep.
But then you also have the exterior, which is whatever is outside that.
Mhm.
Like anything always is situated in an unknown context.
Mhm. Yep.
Like if you think about the observable universe, goes as big as you can. You've got uh, or if you think of like the solar system, or even the galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy. If you could somehow put a boundary around that, like an imaginary kind of sphere, and say
Yeah.
this is inside the galaxy, that's outside the galaxy,
Yeah.
the intergalactic empty space. But then what's that inside of? It's this unknown, unknowable thing that's outside of whatever we know. So if we
Mhm.
say, well, we can always push the boundaries of the known a little bit further. We can expand
Yeah.
the exterior, the limits of what we know,
Yeah.
but then we just push the boundary back further. So
Yep.
whatever is outside of that is unknown. And it's
Yep.
instead of this picture of where like here's everything that's known in this big circle, and the unknown is this little circle inside that we're shrinking and making
Mhm.
smaller and smaller. That's kind of like the rationalist, materialist perspective. It's
Yeah.
the opposite. Here's what we know is this little circle here. What we don't know is everything outside of that. So
Mhm.
there's automatically, anytime you have any concept of a thing, there's automatically four domains, or like four, yeah, like four domains that come along with that. You have the inside of it, you have the boundary of it, you have what's outside of it, and then you have whatever that is situated in. And that is something that you can't ever get rid of. So if you ever have like a closed picture of reality and say this is all of reality, you
Yeah.
always
Yeah.
go, well, what's outside that?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Or if you say, uh, if you, that's my thought too, but it's really good. But basically, there is the outside. There is always like there's the picture in the frame, and then there's whatever is outside the picture frame.
Well,
And so
what you're. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah. Sorry.
you can never have a complete like model of reality,
Yeah.
because if you say this is a closed model of reality, then you can always go, what's outside that? So ironically, sort of a complete model of reality is one that acknowledges its incompleteness.
Yes. Yes.
Because we
Yes.
know this much, and then outside here we don't. That is a complete model. Whereas if it tries to be a complete model and says this is everything there is, automatically it's incomplete. Which
Yes.
pretty
Yes.
much
Yes.
parallels Gödel's theorems about consistency and completeness.
Yeah.
But it's that's my version of there's no such thing as knowing everything. There's no such thing as a complete model, or a complete model would have to be one that acknowledges its incompleteness, and then you can be complete. You can be consistent by acknowledging the bounds of your knowledge or your ignorance.
Do you remember? I know you know, and I really appreciate that you did that. You listened to, I think, my entire podcast, and let's see. I have an episode called "It's Turtle all the Way Down" is the correct answer, and there's a poem at the end of it. And one of the things that I say in the poem is, anything that is made singular has nothing with which to be compared. Therefore, there is no information. And that's essentially what you're saying, is that once you have a complete singular object, then you don't have anything to compare and contrast with it. And so then that thing loses its ability to have meaning, because information needs this in and out, self and other structure to create a reference so that you can create meaning. That's the whole point of breaking of symmetry. If you have a singular, then you have symmetry, and there's no breaking of symmetry to create meaning or a reference. Um, and so yeah, that's so basically we're in complete agreement about what you just said there. And
Is nothing.
yes, 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 yes. And it's true too, because if you then say something like, if one thing maps to everything, then it maps to nothing. If you have a symbol that can represent absolutely everything, then it means absolutely nothing. Um, and so that's kind of like the nature of the incoherence that I was talking about. Like, I think that this is fundamental to the nature of God. It's something like, as beings who are stuck in a symbolic order, you know, of language and symbols to create meaning. As beings like that, we are always stuck needing a compare and contrast to make references and in and out. We need that to break symmetry so we can have information. Um, and that's the symbolic order. So within Lacan, that's a Lacanian register called the symbolic order. Um, and uh, and yeah, so the nature of and so because of that, we are stuck in that structure. We can never look outside of ourselves. And the moment we look outside of ourselves to examine the structure, to create and turn it to an object, to look at it third person, it's almost like we're stuck in the structure and we're trying to examine ourselves and to get a complete picture of things. But to examine ourselves, we need to be able to look at it and to analyze it. But in doing so, we alienate ourselves from the thing we're trying to analyze, and the incompleteness is still like here somewhere. And so this is the fundamental nature of being a being that isn't God, and the degree to which we try to ever be God is the degree to which we're trying to inhabit the space of completeness. But that only leads to paradoxical, like nonsensical. It's like you're stuck into pure symmetry at that point. You're stuck into pure symmetry at that point, and you can't make sense of things. And so there's this unknowability to God that we are stuck with. And yeah, yeah,
A paradox is part of reality, so you can't have reality without having paradox. Like that, like paradox has to be included. You can't say all of this which is completely consistent is reality, and that paradoxical stuff over there is not reality.
yeah.
'Cause then you don't have a complete picture.
Well, I always say, another phrase I say is, everything is not everything if it does not include what it is not. Everything is not everything if it does not include what it is not.
I think strongly resonates with non-dualism,
Hmm.
which also I think comes out of the Tao Te Ching in a lot of ways. But so something so I something that has a lot of parallels with all this is Forrest Landry's work. This is one of Forrest Landry's books that
Hmm.
it's not like published um anywhere. I got it years ago at an event that I attended. He was at where he was like he like printed some of his books and he was giving them away.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
This is like super dense. It's like super dense. And like I've made uh a while back, I watched all of his interviews and I just made a point. I've had this for a long time. Like I really want to dig into because I feel like he's probably onto something. He might be onto something. If I could just understand. And so I just read like a page or two a day. I just like each morning I just like read, and it's like super dense. But I feel like I'm starting to get an intuitive sense of his concepts. Continuity and symmetry are are major things major concepts that he uses. It has to do with continuity and symmetry, the relationship between the subjective and the objective,
Yep. Yep.
sort of. Like one of his conclusions is that there is no ultimate objective domain.
Yeah.
Because sort of, this isn't quite how he says it, but it's sort of like reality is made up of many different perspectives. There is no singular perspective. He actually uses the term omniscient, immanent, omniscient, and transcendent for like the different modes.
Mm-hmm.
And the first person would be immanent. Objective, first person subjective would be the immanent mode. Third person objective would be
Omniscience.
the transcendent. No, would be the omniscient mode.
Omniscience. Yeah.
And then the outside would be the transcendent mode. So one example he gives is like if you have a photograph, there's the perspective of from which the photograph is taken corresponds to the immanent mode. The totality of all the information in the photograph corresponds to the omniscient mode, and the like reality outside of the photograph is the transcendent mode. So it's like the transcendent like doesn't even intersect. There's like the first person perspective from which you can just see what you can see from a point, and then there's the omniscient, which is kind of like the totality of information that you could access, and then there's the transcendent, which is what I call the exterior. There's like that which is outside of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'm mostly most of the way through this. I feel like I would need to like read it at least several more times and really study it because it's not it has the level of like almost mathematical rigor, but it's words instead of
Yeah.
mathematical symbols. But the more I do wrap my head around it, the more I feel like it's he's onto something. There's some deep relationships there. I almost wish that he had like written it in a way that was easier to read,
Mm-hmm.
but he's kind of uh, a purist for uh, accuracy and clarity. So he makes
Yeah.
a point of like he intentionally does not simplify things uh, in order to not sacrifice clarity.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes he just, and that's kind of the problem, is that he's trying, like he can't use simpler words, because basically the more complicated word is a data packet. It's a compression. It's a compression. And if he were to try to explain it in simpler words, he'd have to unzip the technical word he's using, which would just extend the length of the book. And then of course within the unzip file, there's going to be technical terms in there that you're going to have to unzip and unzip and unzip, and you'll be exactly doing what you're talking about, expanding forever with structure and not saying anything, because you're constantly trying to explain everything, and it's like part of the impossibility. This is part of the problem too. Is like this nature of the inherently incoherent, is that you start off with a word, and that thing's not going to have context. So you're trying to build context around it to make it make sense, but you have to start somewhere. So you have to start somewhere, especially if it's a new idea. If I'm trying to communicate something new to you and it's sufficiently large, then when I first start explaining it to you, it's going to sound incoherent. It has to. This is a point that C.S. Lewis made in his book on miracles. He's like, if someone comes to you and claims that they have something like the information about the transcendent God or something like that, like the Bible does, and you hear them start talking about it, and it sounds like incoherent nonsense. He's like, that should be the case, because if it was immediately comprehensible, then how big could it be? How new could it be? And this is the whole point to information theory. Like the whole point is that if you have information, then you can predict the future. So that means that if I come to you and tell you something and you immediately understand it, then that means that you already knew everything. I'm not really telling you anything new if you can understand it immediately. For it to be new, it has to be incoherent. It has to be. It's almost like whenever, especially when you're thinking about big ideas like the ones we're discussing, it's like trying to find a center of the universe. Where do you start? Well, to explain this, I need to explain that. To explain this, I need to explain that. And so it's just going to start off incoherent until you interact with it long enough to where it makes sense to you, so you can build enough context to like compress it and intuit it yourself. It's the only way it works. That's the reason why I made the podcast the way I did. The purpose of the podcast is for you to interact with it and listen to it till eventually the ideas just kind of seep into you.
And ultimately, it's grounded in subjective experience, which is fundamentally separate. Like,
Yeah.
what, like my subjective experience can never be identical. This is also something that Forrest Landry talks about. My subjective experience can never be identical with your subjective experience, because then they wouldn't be different things. They would be the same thing. It would be like the same person.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Yeah.
The reason I was laughing is 'cause I thought of another passage, another Dao Jing passage, was what you were just talking about. But the one I was looking for earlier, this when I first started listening to Terrence Deacon, I thought of this, and then it turns out he this he he uses this passage to open his book. This is passage 11 from the Dao De Jing.
Mhm.
30 spokes share the wheel's hub. It is the center hole that makes it useful. Shaped clay into a vessel. It's the space within that makes it useful. Cut doors and windows for a room. It's the holes that make it useful. Therefore, profit comes from what is there, usefulness from what is not there.
Yeah, this is exactly Lacanian as well. Like actually talking with Dario, there's this PhD thesis by this guy named Greenshield, and Lacan uses this example of molding clay and creating the lack in between the lack, the like building a sphere around the hole. It's I mean this I mean at this point I'm completely certain that the nature of reality requires an instantiation of the eternal truth of entropy, lack, void, emptiness. It's unavoidable. That emptiness creates paradox, and that paradox is basically the glitch in the matrix that shows you the degree to which what you think is real is incomplete. And your drive is constantly toward trying to complete yourself, but you can never complete yourself because the act of trying to complete yourself is always an alien. I mean, this is Lacanian. Like it's the same thing no matter who you talk to. And this is what I'm talking about that really bothers me is that this is so obvious at this point. Like if you interact with enough smart people who are thinking about these things seriously, and you interact with enough religious texts, and you interact with enough science and stuff like that, you are going to converge on this every single time. Every single time. It's the infinite regression problem in philosophy. No matter what you do, you will converge on this problem. And that's why I said that this idea of the materialistic or the scientific cannot ever be complete, because it ignores this fundamental truth of incompleteness and paradox and lacks and holes and emptiness. And that thing is the feminine nature. That emptiness, the symmetry, the entropy, that is the feminine nature, and the symbolic order, the structure, that's the masculine nature. That's the space of information. The masculine is constraints, it's rules, it's borders, it's boundaries, it's exclusion. That is the nature of in Lacan called it the no of the father, the signifier that fundamentally anchors the symbolic order. He called it the no of the father, because it's saying nope, this is structure, this either in the structure or it's not in the structure. This is reality, it's not reality. You can't do that, because if you do that you'll die. You can't do this, you can't do that. It's the rule, that's the structure, that's the father. And the emptiness is the mother. It's the symmetry, it's the homogeneity, it's the space where creation can occur. It's just unavoidable. And I listen to all this philosophy and all these people. It's just like everyone's circling around this. How it, it seems like we're never going to solve this problem. And it's precisely why I said earlier how I categorize scientists is that most scientists refuse to engage with it. And they refuse to engage with religious texts. They refuse to engage with these things seriously. And then when they do, they try to do it all through calculations and measuring neurons. And it's just like, we're not going to get anywhere, man. I don't know.
It's you could say truth is incommensurate with reality.
What do you mean? Can you expand on that?
I keep thinking of these Tao Te Ching passages as you're talking, but okay, here it is. Yeah. Uh and this actually ties back to what you're saying earlier about like materialistic scientists. I thought I like there's a perfect example of this, a better example of this almost couldn't be asked for. Um there's like so reality is what is, truth is representational.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
Truth and
so
representation.
like like what is cannot ever be fully represented by anything other than itself, because if you are representing it, then you're compacting it, so it's the map is not the territory. um
Mm-hmm. Yep.
and but I was
I want to say that was another Lacanian thing. The real cannot be encompassed by the symbolic order, and then it creates the lack. So you just said another Lacanian. Yeah.
and I'm thinking of this story I remember from when I was a little kid, where it might have been one of Aesop's fables, where there's like there's two animals who are splitting up uh like a pie or something, some piece of food, and one of them says, "Oh, my piece is bigger than yours. It's not fair." So the fox comes along and they ask the fox to uh
Mhm.
intermediate for them, and the
Yeah.
fox goes, "Oh, well, let me take a little bite off of this one, and then it'll be fair." And then you go, well, now his is bigger. Oh, let me take
Yeah.
a bite off that, and then
Yeah.
eventually the fox eats both of them. Like
Yeah.
it's never going to match up perfectly. It's always going to be
Yep. Yep.
overlap.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah.
the but I heard it was a debate between Richard Dawkins and somebody. I don't remember who was it.
Jordan Peterson.
It might have been Jordan Peterson, but
Yeah.
I can't say for sure. But I just remember this one line where the other person said something about like the truth that is there's truth that's beyond propositions, and Richard Dawkins said, "Show me a truth that's not propositional."
Yeah. 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 You get you.
Well, okay, so like, give me a proposition that's not propositional. Well, you can't do that. But
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
the reality that is, beyond and will never be fully captured in any finite set of propositions, at least.
This is the point. Like what you're describing right there is the nature of the subjective. This this is the thing that drives me insane. The nature of the subjective is the lack. It's the incompleteness. And so the truth, like I was arguing with someone online when I first started posting my videos on YouTube, and they're again this materialistic computer scientist person. And it's like when you love somebody or someone says that they love you or two people say they're in love, you can't scientifically prove that. It's not possible. You have to accept that there is a fundamental nature of reality that is incoherent and incomplete. And that is essentially where our subjective experience is. Like it's almost like the incomplete, like, as Lacan would say, the nature of the lack or the incompleteness is the basis for us to have subjective experience at all. And so there is a fundamental nature to relationship with others that is not based off of empirical proof and structure. It's based off of feeling and emotions. And these materialists, they cannot comprehend. It's almost like they think that the masculine is God. They're treating the masculine as God, as if it's the totality of everything. And if it's not in the masculine, then it doesn't count. They don't allow for your emotions and feelings to establish objective truth. And this is the point, is that the subjective and objective, the if masculine and the feminine, they are binaries that are convenient for us to perceive. But there is no feminine without masculine, which means that you may create the binary to say that one is up and one is down and that they're mutually exclusive. But in fact, without the other one has no context. It makes no sense. It's incoherent. It's lost. And so you have to say something like, no, the subjective is the objective. And then you're like, that's paradoxical. It makes no sense. In Lacanian, that is the real. The real is the thing that cannot be totalized by the symbolic order. And this is what I mean. Fundamentally, these materialist scientists and Richard Dawkins is the absolute worst case scenario cannot comprehend the nature of subjectivity. They cannot incorporate the feminine into themselves to understand it. They can't. And it's really frustrating watching it, because they're just like materialism, structure, proposition. Without it, there's no truth. And it's just like, okay, you've never been in a relationship with a person in your life, then, I guess.
Ken Wilber refers to it as one of the four quadrants colonizing the other. So,
Mm.
the stance, like the hardcore extreme materialist stance, is just like is the objective colonizing the subjective.
Yes.
And the opposite view, like kind of the extreme idealist view that there is no objective reality and there's only
Yes.
subjective. That's like subjective colonizing
Yes.
the objective.
That's exactly what I think is happening with this idea of, a man is anyone who identifies as a man, or a woman is anyone who identifies as a woman. It's when you say that a thing is anyone who identifies as a thing, then the only criteria is whether or not someone says they identify as it, which means that it doesn't matter what characteristics you have or what structure you have, or what your traits are. If you say you identify as a thing, then you are the thing, which means that there is no objective basis to exclude anyone. So you've taken the nature of the border, the structure, the no of the father, the masculine, and you said you're not allowed to exclude. You're not allowed to say, no, if you identify as 14 and you've actually lived on the earth for 30 years, then I can say, no, you are not 14. And so the nature of saying that you cannot exclude at all is the nature of the subjective colonizing the objective. It's trying to use a pure subjective structure as to function as an objective structure. It's the exact opposite problem.
Well, if one were to complete, and this is actually one of the main messages of integral theory, is that a complete picture of reality has to include all of reality. So if one were to say everything is subjective, there's no objective, or everything is objective, there's no subjective, either way, you've got an incomplete model
Yeah.
or incomplete picture of reality. Are you, you mentioned in your last episode, you were interested in having conversations on your podcast. I thought
Yeah.
a topic that you would find very interesting to discuss is the Tao Te Ching itself. So if you want to do an episode,
Let's do it.
Ching,
For sure. Yeah, we can do that.
I just have a couple of passages here that I think you're going to love. This is passage 1.
Okay. What passage? Wait. First, before you go into it, passage, like, what's the structure of the Tao Te Ching in terms of its written structure?
Right.
When you say passage 1, is it like the first sentence of the Bible in that sense?
Well, the Tao Te Ching is 81 short verses.
Okay.
Like you could sit down and read the whole thing in like if you just like read straight through, maybe in 30 minutes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was thinking in terms of Buddhism, like they don't have like a central text; they just have a bunch of texts. So it's like saying like the
Right.
first. Okay, so I didn't know what the structure of the Tao.
But the Tao Te Ching or Daoism all comes out of the Tao Te Ching, which is like very short and concise. This is the English right here. So
Okay.
like the passage 1, and then this is the Chinese.
Okay.
But like it all fits on one page, and it's like
Okay.
81 short things like that. Which is
Right.
one of my favorite things about the Tao Te Ching, because um I like Stan Grof's definition of an oracle, which is something that's sufficiently complex to read the contents of the subconscious mind back to you.
Yes.
And so many things can be oracles, but and it's easy to make an oracle just by making something really complex. Like the Bible, for example, it's big and complex, and like everything is in there. You could find, if you just look hard enough, you can find almost anything you want because it's so big and complex.
Yeah.
The Tao Te Ching manages to function as an oracle very effectively, but it's very, very minimalist, which kind of fits in with this Asian aesthetic of minimalism of, like traditional Chinese paintings, so just like a few brush strokes on
Yeah.
like this ceiling of the Sistine Chapel or something.
But that would be the ideal, right? You'd want like if you could like if you had one symbol, just one symbol that expressed the entirety of reality, then that would be like the ultimate like theory or whatever.
The Taoists actually have such a symbol.
Mm.
It's called the Tai Chi 2 symbol, also known as the yin yang.
Okay. Yeah.
like it is like the symbol that's supposed to, encapsulate this whole perspective. And like
Yeah.
really to me, like I think I think all of this stuff like was figured out a long time ago. It was written down in the Tao Te Ching, and everything else is just like um extra.
Mm.
Almost everything. And it is like it's very, very small, very, very concise, but you can find so much stuff in there. So this is passage one. And Tao, it literally translates kind of as way, like the way or the path.
Okay.
But it's like the
Like in
way of
Buddhism.
nature,
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
which is like, the laws of physics or whatever you want to call it, just the way of nature, the way that nature unfolds and evolves.
Does this predate Buddhism or is this post-Buddhism? The Tao.
I think the Tao Te Ching is earlier. The Tao Te Ching, it originated in China. Buddhism originated in India and
Yeah.
later transferred to China. And I think Taoism was already there because where Zen Buddhism came from actually was sort of like when Buddhism kind of blended with Taoism,
Mm-hmm.
and it turned into this branch called Chan Buddhism, which moved into Japan and was called Zen. But Zen
Yeah.
is like Taoist influenced Buddhism.
Yeah. 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 Okay. I'm sorry. I'm not ignoring you. I'm actually looking up the date of Taoism.
Yeah, I'm looking up too because I'm curious. Of course,
Taoism.
with really old stories, it's like it's hard to say what was actually factual and what was not. But there is a really cool origin story for the Tao Te Ching. But
Okay. Oh, it looks like they're around
yeah,
the
the
same
Tao Te
time.
Ching was written before the Buddha lived. It was Lao Tzu was thought to have lived in the 6th century BC, contemporary with Confucius. So, and and it's like, who can say Lao Tzu? It translates as old man.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, who knows if there actually was a person that wrote the Tao Te Ching or whatever? But it's
Yeah.
just old stories. So passage one: the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao.
Yep.
The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The nameless is the beginning of heaven and earth. The named is the mother of 10,000 things. Ever desireless, one can see the mystery. Ever desiring, one can see the manifestation. These two spring from the same source, but differ in name. This appears as darkness. Darkness within darkness. The gate to all mystery.
Is that it? Yeah. Yeah, we could chew on that. We could do a whole episode just on that one sentence alone. I mean, once even hearing it, I immediately go back to the Bible, what did it say? Uh, what you just said, it said can you read it again?
The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name.
So first off, just in that and alone, it's already creating a separation between the transient and the eternal. So this is true no matter what religion you find. This is what drives me nuts about the materialists again. It's like they do not take religion seriously. They just think it's all stupid nonsense, which is just frustrating beyond belief. But when you look at any religion, whether it's Buddhism, Daoism, Christianity, I don't know, I haven't studied Islam, but I'm sure it's probably there too. There's a separation between the eternal, the eternal transcendental, and the temporal transient. Heaven and earth, heaven and earth. They all start off like that. So this nature of reality fundamentally goes off of that which is transcendent, that which is eternal, that which is unchanging, that which everything else arises from, that which is not beholden to the law of impermanence as in Buddhism, and then those things that are made up of temporal things that come into existence, that arise and die, that form and then go away, and that's just like an axiom. And no matter what religion you start from, these are the fundamental things that they're asking, and it's just simply the separation between heaven and earth.
Don't forget Plato also.
Yeah, it's like, to me, at this point, we should all just be treating this as an objective fact and not arguing with each other. And the thing that I've been thinking about this entire time we've been having this conversation is in the conversation with Terrence Deacon, you said his name is, right? he talks about, like, again, he talks about us as these beings who have adapted to the symbolic environment. And so, and he posed that, like, he compared that to beavers becoming aquatic mammals by living in a aquatic environment. And so, when you oppose the symbolic environment, you are opposing a space, and a space of reality. Terrence Deacon is not saying something incoherent. He's saying there exists an objectively real space called the space of symbolism. And as beings, our neurology has formed to adapt to that space, and that is the physical. So our neurology is the physical portion, and then within that, there's some sort of symbolic environment that we can't see. We can't hold it in our hand. It's something that is something like beyond the physical, but it is an environment that exists, and we adapt to it. And so when you're looking at something like Christianity, and I'm reading the text and I'm coming into relationship with it, there is something like whatever physical things happened to come to the symbolic structure that is captured inside the Bible, it's mapping a space, the symbolic space. So the questions you can begin asking, especially if you start off from a materialist point of view, is how good is this mapping out the symbolic, the space of heaven, the separation from the transcendental, the eternal versus the temporal? How well is it actually creating a picture of this environment that we live in, that Terrence Deacon, this neuroscientist, is saying that we adapted to, which is why our brains function different than monkeys, even though physically they're not fundamentally different outside of the way they connect themselves together. And so this is the questions you need to be asked. So if you're interacting with the Bible or religious text, you're not asking. You don't start off by asking how well does it describe me throwing this at a wall. You're asking how well is this mapping out the eternal symbolic space, the environment that we've adapted to.
You just made me think of something I read this morning. So yeah, actually, one thing I find really interesting about Terrence Deacon, his classification is a neuroanthropologist.
Oh,
Something I hadn't
interesting.
even heard of before.
Yeah. Maybe he started it himself, but yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So this was a passage that I just read this morning in Forrest Landry's book. No degree, even a very large degree of knowing, is equivalent to any degree, even a very small degree of understanding. No degree of understanding is equivalent to any degree of knowing. Understanding cannot replace or create knowing. Knowing cannot replace or create understanding.
Yeah. Anyway, did you want to say something about that?
Well, there's like usual, there's all these subpaths branching out, but there's some, including some deep connections with the free energy principle. But what I wanted to mention even more, so there's this kind of like this philosophical argument between like monism and dualism. I kind of think they're both true in a certain way, but like an idea that recently occurred to me is the idea of ontological dimensions. So like if you ask, is this cup real? And there's the ontological dimension of physical matter reality, as Tom Campbell would call it. But then if you ask, like, is Batman real, or is the number 2 real? It's like, to be real, to exist. Actually, Forrest Landry distinguishes between the concept of to be real, to exist, and to be objective. And I can't quite explain what the distinction is, but if in terms of being real or existing, it seems like there's dimensions. You can say, something is real in a certain sense.
Yeah.
You can say something else is real in another sense. I'm going to fight anybody who says Batman does not exist. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And he exists in the symbolic space, like, clearly.
I mean, he exists as a character in all these stories. Well, that's a type of existence.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in a materialistic point of view, he exists as memory stored as a specific configuration in our physical system. So there's a degree to which he objectively exists as an object, because when I go and use the word Batman, it maps your head in the space of concepts to Batman as opposed to hamburgers.
Well, that's like saying the number 2 written on a piece of paper is the number 2.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's obviously not, there's the representation
Yeah.
in people's brains and in books and movies and stuff of this thing. So there's the representation and there's the thing that's being represented, which
Yeah. Yeah.
obviously have different ontological dimensions. But
Signifier and signified, like a Lacanigan.
yeah, I think of another way I think of it is there's like kind of layers. There's the field of information, and then there's the condensed field of matter. And then within the condensed field of matter, because like
Yeah.
people always talk about the ether. Is the ether a real thing? Well, for there to be waves, there must be something waving. Seems obvious to me. The field is the information. It's information. Like the electric field is the information about if there was a charged particle here, what force would it experience? It encodes the information.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So everything is quantum fields. Well, quantum fields can condense into particles, which is like the condensed field of matter. Which is itself the substrate, like the quantum fields are the substrate of particles, which are themselves the substrate of uh, of the biosphere,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
which is itself the substrate of the anthroposphere, which
Hmm.
is itself the substrate of the technosphere and the noosphere. Um, but that's kind of the model I've been developing for thinking about it. But I definitely wanted to share at least 2 more Tao Te Ching passages that I know you're going to love. Passage 6. Wait, no, that's not it. I just had it here. One about, well, that one's not quite it. Okay, here's one. Okay, here's one. This actually, I thought of this earlier when you were saying, when you first start to hear truth, it sounds like nonsense. Something along those
Yeah.
lines.
Yeah. 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 I could explain it to you using a paper on quantum entanglement to explain it to you in mathematical rigorous terms. But it's basically like if you have a structure that's large enough and you are unfamiliar with it, someone has to start explaining it to you. They're gonna have to start from somewhere, from like if it's a huge structure, they're gonna start explaining it to you. And that little bit of information is gonna sound like incoherent nonsense because the thing is just so foreign and so big that you have to start somewhere, and it's not until you actually interact with it and get a large enough local neighborhoods where it starts becoming coherent.
Also ties in with learning theory, in that if you want to explain something, you need to find a way to make it relate to what the person already knows. So
But that's the point. That's the point of incoherence. The degree to which they already have a familiarity with the thing is the degree to which it's not new. So in other words, if they already have a significant familiarity with the concept, then you can give them like 5 symbols and like, oh, I get it. You know what I mean? So the less familiar they are, the more you're going to have to start somewhere to where it's not going to make sense.
the less of an existing shared framework.
Yes.
Or like if you were stranded on a desert island with somebody who spoke a different language,
Yes.
and
Yes. Exactly.
wanted to start the process of communication.
Yep.
But what I'm saying is, like, in learning theory, the best way to communicate something is to relate it to something that the person already knows. Like if you want to
Exactly.
teach, if you want to teach math, then find a way to make the mathematical concepts that
Yep.
are new relate to something
Yep.
that the student already understands, and because otherwise it's gonna sound like nonsense. So if
Yep.
you build a bridge to existing knowledge, which is ideally you would start with a bridge to existing knowledge, but then it would lead to new knowledge rather
Yeah.
than it wouldn't be total overlap.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
But this is a passage that made me think of.
Okay.
The wise student hears of the Tao and practices it diligently. The average student hears of the Tao and gives it thought now and again.
Mm.
The foolish student hears of the Tao and laughs aloud. If there were no laughter, it would not be the Tao. If it were not for that
Mm.
laugh, it would not be the Tao.
Interesting. Yeah. That's beautiful. I love it. That's good.
And that's actually a good point. Hence it is said, the bright path seems dim. Going forward seems like retreat. The easy way seems hard. The highest virtue seems empty. Great purity seems sullied. A wealth of virtue seems inadequate. The strength of virtue seems frail. Real virtue seems unreal. The perfect square has no corners. Great talents ripen late. But it's virtue with a capital V in all of these. This is the virtue of the Tao. Dao De Jing, Da is virtue. So Dao De Jing is like scripture on the way of nature and its virtue. That's what the virtue is. Dao is the way, and Da Te
The virtue.
and Dao De Jing is the virtue of the way. The
Okay.
perfect square has no corners. Great talents ripen late. The highest notices, the highest notes are hard to hear. The greatest form has no shape. The Tao is hidden and without name. The Tao alone nourishes and brings everything to fulfillment.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, again, I've never interacted with the Tao, but none of this, all of it makes perfect sense to me. Like, I've been studying Buddhism and Christianity for like 4 or 5 years now. I actually got baptized in August, so I'm a full blown Christian now. Um, but yeah, I mean, the nature of the paradox, the emptiness, the like, whether or not, like, I mean, even in the Bible, it says like to the unbelievers, the truth of the cross sounds like foolishness. Like it just sounds like, and like God humbles people, like he exalts himself or glorifies himself with the humble, like with the not with the humble, but with like the ridiculous or the absurd. And so this is what I've been trying to say is that the nature of reality itself fundamentally has an absurdity to it. Reality is absurd. That's one thing we have to understand. The nature of reality is absurd. That when you try to wrap your head around it, you're going to interact with the incompleteness, which is the void, which is uncertainty, which is entropy, which is emptiness. And that uncertainty creates chaos and fear. And so when you interact with it, with the void, the absurdity, you're going to interact with fear. And yeah, it's God, I lost my thread again. It was yeah.
Well, logic will only get you so far. Yes, this is it. This is okay. I did find the other one I was looking for, which relates to there's several passages in the Tao Te Ching that relate to the nature of the masculine and feminine.
Hold on, wait. I was so it's the empty. So it's the Anyway, go ahead.
All right.
And I go off on a tangent, and I lose my place, and I'm frustrated with myself.
I know there's so many ideas I don't even bother trying to keep track of all of them.
Yeah.
This is passage 6. The valley spirit never dies. It is the woman, primal mother. Her gateway is the root of heaven and earth. Is like a veil barely seen. Use it; it will never fail. It also, so a lot of people talk about like the masculine feminine duality, and so like saying like, you know, there's things that are masculine in nature and things that are feminine in nature, and so these are masculine things and these are feminine things. The Tao Te Ching talks about yin and yang,
Hmm.
and which is are just, it's yin and yang are not a thing. They just represent um co-arising dualities where you have one, you have the other. So if you have light, you have dark. If you have high, you have low. And it's just basically, it's the nature of comparison, which goes back to, you have to have a separation between this and not this. If you got this, you got to have not this. Otherwise, you don't have anything.
Yep. Information is broken symmetry, and it's the reason why we're talking. My video on information is broken symmetry.
Right.
You have to break the symmetry somewhere.
And so, what's another term for surprise? Could be another term for surprise or surprisal, aka information.
The information you earn, you gain during communication. Yeah.
Yeah. So the concepts are yin, yang, and the way Daoism classifies things is not with like yin, or with not masculine and feminine being the primary categories. Yin and yang are the primary categories, And so feminine is yin, masculine is yang.
Yeah, yeah.
Dark is yin, light is yang.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There's so
It's the form of duality. It's the form of in Buddhism that would be the form. That would be like the eternal structure. So in other words, feminine and masculine would be an instantiation, a specific instantiation of something that isn't changing. When I go from light to dark, feminine to masculine, subjective and objective, all of those are changing, but there's something that doesn't change consistently as you go from each one of those, and that's what the yin and yang is. So that's how you start creating transcendental structures, and that's that's the nature of form in Buddhism.
yeah, like there's in order for there to be anything, there has to be a distinction. As the Tao Te Ching says, first there was the Tao, which is the void. Then the void coalesced into something. Something split into yin and yang, which is two things. Two things becomes three things, and three things become the 10,000 things, which is like the it means in Chinese, the 10,000 things means like everything that exists, all the variety of the physical world. It starts with
So what you just described is exactly Yusef's. You remember Yusef's business? He has a mandala as its symbol. Yeah, what you just described is the unfolding of the mandala.
yeah, like it's everything is one thing, but as you make
Yes.
distinctions, you separate it into more and more varieties of things. So it's not that everything is either masculine or feminine. It's that everything is either yin or yang, and masculine and feminine fit into the yin yang paradigm. And there's like in general, the nature of yang is like expanding outwards. Yin is contracting inwards.
Mm-hmm.
Except that even like you could look up distinctions like in traditional Chinese medicine, yin and yang are influences, and certain influences are yang influences, like spicy foods. Certain things are yin influences. Yang is associated with heating. Yin is associated with cooling. Yang is dry. Yin is moist, etc., etc. Except that ultimately, it's sort of like a charge parity symmetry. Yin is yang to, or yin is yang with respect to yang, and yang is yin with respect to yin. Like if you just switched the labels yin and yang, nothing in the universe would change. So even the nature of yin and yang is not absolute. What's absolute is just the act of making distinctions itself.
Yeah,
and there's a correspondence between things that are loud and bright and expanding and outwards, and things that are cool and dark and silent and inwards. But it just like it doesn't matter which you call positive and negative charges, it doesn't matter which you call yin and yang, because negative is just the opposite of whatever positive is.
Yeah. And what you just described was that so what you just described was the expansion and the contraction. That's like fire and ice. And fire is feminine, ice is masculine. And it's the idea of, you can imagine, like earlier we're talking about the objective trying is occupying the subjective and like taking it over. That would be like saying you're not allowed, there is no subjective freedom at all. It's pure structure, just a structure, and that's all there is. This is determinism. So this is the end point of a purely materialistic worldview, is that you believe that the world is totally deterministic. In which case, if it's totally deterministic, then we're all just automaton and we're not doing anything. There's no free will. There's no capacity for creation. There's no freedom. There's no nothing. Everything's frozen. So and then everything is inherently actually dead. There actually is no life because there's no free will. There's no choice. It's all just a giant mechanical machine. And that is death by freezing. That's like the masculine taking over everything. That's a pure contracted frozen reality. And then the other one is one where it's like, there is no objectivity, there is no structure, it's all freedom, there's no basis for anything. And then once you have that, then everything is incoherent. We can't even determine what a man or a woman is anymore. Like everything becomes incoherent in a way to where not only can we not communicate linguistically, but then we can't come together to build structures. And this is like the heat death. So now you're going to a heat death where all structure disintegrates. And that takes you back to the void, the original part of creation. So, from void is creation. So from void is creation. So now you're going back to void, and everything has been dispersed into empty. All the structure has been broken down. So that's like death by fire.
But this is
And so,
where, to me, Daoism maps straight onto non-dualism, which I uh I'll mention too. Like I had an experience at a certain point
mhm.
where it became self-evident to me that Buddhism and Taoism are the same philosophy in different clothing.
Sounds like it to me, as far as as far as I can tell.
And 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 it comes down to like the underlying message of non-dualism is sort of like all distinctions are subjective. They're distinction, and this is like Joseph's thing too. Is the, like, distinctions aren't things that exist in the world. They're things that we sort of construct. So
Hmm.
and this is how, in a sense, we construct the world by making distinctions. We distinguish between this and that. And I mean, if you think about, like, in terms of human development, when a baby is born, at least our best understanding is when babies are born, they don't have any distinctions. They have like very minimal
Yeah,
distinctions.
yeah,
They
yeah.
know if if this thing is in your mouth, you should suck on it, and a few things like that. But um, the way that they perceive is like they don't perceive different objects. They just kind of perceive this kind of like kaleidoscope of just different sensations.
Hmm.
And we actually, our brain actually has to learn, like, oh, this is my foot. I can put it in my mouth and bite on it and I'll feel it. And, like, this is my hand. When I do this, it moves. And they have to learn first to distinguish between like my body and everything else, distinguish between inside
Yeah,
and outside. And they
yeah,
and they have to distinguish, like, this other being who's my mother is like, that's actually a separate person. That's not just a part of me or an extension of me.
yeah,
They actually, when when we become conscious, like, all sensory data, it just kind of floods together into a meaningless scramble until we learn to make distinctions between this part of my body, that part of my body, this is my body, that's not my body, this is one object in the environment, that's another object in the environment. And
hmm,
and so, like, those, in a sense, those categories and distinctions are not innate. We sort of, they're functional representations that we make in order to make sense of the world, in order to be able to function in it. So it's like, very pragmatic, adaptive, kind of like what Donald Hoffman says, that the
yeah.
function of the brain is not to represent reality, but it's to uh, win at evolutionary game theory.
Hmm.
So in that sense, I I remember having an argument with my girlfriend about this when I was in college, and she was saying, like, distinctions don't really exist in the world. I'm like, yes, they actually exist. They're real objective things. um, but they the act of making a distinction is a subjective mental act. Because, like,
Yeah,
if somebody says, like, all classical music sounds the same. Well, they're not making a distinction between
yeah, yeah, yeah,
composers, and to them it does all sound the same. It's the one thing.
yeah,
Whereas somebody who, somebody's like a wine taster, they make all these fine distinctions. So to them, there's all these
yeah,
different things. Whereas to somebody who doesn't make those distinctions, oh, it's just a bottle of wine. It's a bottle of wine. What's the difference?
yeah, yep, 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 yep. Yeah, and this is what you're just describing is coarse graining, essentially.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and it's basically precision is what you're describing. If you have it's a resolution, what you're saying. So if you have resolution limit, you can't make distinctions. Everything is blurred in the same thing, and then this goes into the idea of micro states and macro states. I don't know, man. Like I don't like when I communicate what I communicate. Um, I don't know how many people can actually hear what I'm saying. I don't know. It's like humanity, we've already got this figured out. Like we just need to put the pieces together. But it seems like everyone's dicking around, working on their own thing. Um, I don't know. It almost feels like at this point we don't need to create more structures. We just need to make coherent the ones that we have already. And it starts off with people just taking religion seriously, taking the metaphysical more seriously, um, and realizing that you can't neatly separate the physical nature of reality from the spiritual and the metaphysical. And if you try to, then you're never going to get anywhere. But hey, man, I got to get going. I guess we can have like 5 more minutes, and then I got to get going.
When would be a good time to record a podcast episode?
Well, I was thinking you can send me this, and we can just upload this for a first
I mean, I
episode.
can do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is probably good enough.